What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to show you some simple techniques on how to assemble face frames for your cabinets. Hey everybody, welcome back. Jason with Benswood Woodworking, and this week I'm going to expand on the cabinet videos that I have done based off a lot of requests, and today we are going to talk about face frames. Before we get started, I want to make something very clear. I've been getting a lot of comments about this cabinet and it not being to scale. As you can see, with me leaning on it, sitting on top of my assembly table, this is not meant to be a full-size cabinet. This is simply a small scale cabinet for the purpose of a video. If you want to find out more detailed information on like basics of cabinet making, I plan on doing a video of that in the future. However, a simple Google search will yield what the standards for most cabinets are in the industry. The face frame is in no way, shape, or form a standard size face frame. It is a size scaled for the small cabinet that we're working on. But again, this is simply an instructional video to give you guys some pointers and some tips on how to go about assembling face frames. Here in this diagram, I've laid out just a few different things that we're going to focus on today. One being a drawer opening and the other one being the cabinet door opening. So for this face frame, we're going to have two vertical boards here and here, and then we're going to have three horizontal boards making the top, the bottom, and the separation for the drawer. The first thing that I want to figure out is what my opening is and what my overhang is going to be. And when I discuss opening and overhang, the opening is the distance from the outside edge of the cabinet to the other outside edge of the cabinet. That is the first measurement that I want to figure out. In this case, my measurement is 315 millimeters or approximately 12 3/8. The overhang that I'm referring to is how much that face frame is going to protrude past the outer wall being here. In most cases, when I'm building cabinets, I'll do anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to roughly 1/4 of an inch. For the face frame that I will be building for this cabinet today, the overhang will be 6 millimeters on each side, which is approximately 1/4 of an inch. Now coming back to the diagram, I know my opening is 315 millimeters, and I know my overhang on each side is going to be 6 millimeters. So 315 plus 12 millimeters is going to give me a total of 327 millimeters. The next measurement that I'm going to concern myself with is the overall height of my vertical boards. I am adding some overhang here, and the overhang that I'm referring to in this case is going to be slight overhang down at the bottom. As you can see here, I will have the same 6 millimeter overhang that will go down on the bottom. There are a lot of different techniques that you can use for this bottom piece here. We're not going to get into the details on that. And what I mean by a lot of different techniques is when you have your face frame on here, and you'll see it shortly, it could either be raised above, you could either have it flush, you could have it exactly the width of your piece of plywood, or you could have a large part protruding down on the bottom, kind of making your toe kick irrelevant. What I'm going to do today for this video is I'm simply going to have it overhang down on the bottom by about 6 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch. And then on the top, it will be roughly the height of a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. Now, I know my height for the front of my cabinet, not including the toe kick, is 506 millimeters or roughly 19 15/16. I'm going to add my 6 millimeters that will protrude below the bottom of the actual shelf itself, and that's going to give me a total of 512 millimeters. Now I have two measurements that are pertinent to what I'm getting ready to do. I went ahead and zoomed in here because I want to show you how I'm going to determine the width of my actual face frame boards themselves. So I know that I'm going to be overhanging 6 millimeters from the outside edge of this wall. I know that my plywood is 18 millimeters. So 18 plus 6 is going to give me 24 millimeters. Now, I plan on putting a drawer in this cabinet in this scenario. So I want to make sure that my face frame extends another 18 millimeters because I'm going to use a piece of 18 millimeter plywood as a backing to make sure that my drawer slides are perfectly flush with my face frame. And we'll talk more about that once we get into it. So 18 plus 18 equals 36, plus my 6 out on the side is going to give me 42. I am using metric. So some people may be looking at this going, this doesn't help me at all because it's metric. It doesn't matter. If you use metric or imperial, all I'm doing is showing you the steps on how to figure out how long your pieces need to be. I've gone ahead and moved the cabinet out of the way, and I've already actually cut my pieces for this face frame. So I have my 2 vertical pieces, as you see here, and then I have my 3 pieces that will be horizontal that will separate the 2 vertical pieces. In this video, the method of joinery that I'm going to use to construct this face frame is actually just going to be pocket screws. Typically, I will use the Festool domino for any of my face frame assemblies. However, I do understand that not everybody has a Festool domino, so today I'm going to show you how to do it with pocket holes with whatever machine that you have to create pocket holes. I'm not going to do a step-by-step instruction on exactly how to assemble it. It's fairly straightforward. This is one part that I want to highlight before I assemble this, and it's important to note how wide you need your opening to be for your drawer. So if you are building a drawer and the front of that drawer and the sides of that drawer are going to be 4 inches tall, you're going to need to make sure that you at least have, I would say, roughly 4 1/8 or 4 1/4, therefore giving you a little bit of gap on the bottom and a little bit of gap on the top. So that's the only part of this where you are actually going to have to measure to make sure that that opening is the way it needs to be. So I've assembled the face frame. So now the only thing left to do is go ahead and attach this. The way that I like to attach my face frames personally is I like to use glue and pin nails, and I use the pin nails in just a couple of spots really just to keep it in place until I'm able to get the clamps on it to allow the glue to dry. Now that I've tested it and I know everything fits the way that it should, I'll go ahead and put a small bead of glue and then I'll go ahead and get this thing assembled. So I've got everything pinned in place, so the next thing that I'll do is I'm going to grab some clamps and I'll clamp it from the front to the back just enough to let the glue dry and settle, and then my face frame is fully installed. Real quick, I just want to share a couple of different pointers that you can do, or a couple little tips when it comes to the face frames. In most cases, you're always going to have this overhang on the face frame even when you're assembling cabinets side by side. When the cabinets are actually getting assembled together, what people end up doing is they put basically a spacer in here that will fill that gap, so when you screw the other cabinet into the other, it's not going to pull those cabinets in towards each other. You do have other options though. The other option that I have used in the past is to take a flush trim bit, and I always make my face frames a little bit oversized on specifically the vertical supports. Therefore, when I go and take my flush trim bit, I can cut it off, make everything uniformed, and then everything will be flush to the cabinet itself. Now, there is a downside to that. The downside is if there's any imperfections in your plywood, meaning your plywood slightly turns a little bit, then that is going to reflect in your face frame. And when you put 2 cabinets next to each other, that's when you're going to notice it. A lot of people ask me, how do you do drawer slides if you have a face frame and there's this space that's created here? It's really quite simple. When I was dealing with my measurements before, I said I wanted 18 millimeters to be inward from this wall here. And the reason I did that is because now I can take a piece of plywood and I can put that piece of plywood in my cabinet. Typically, I will cut them to be just slightly long or wider than the actual drawer slide itself. And now I can put this piece here and it is now flush with the face frame. So when I actually take my drawer slide, my drawer slide is now flush with the face frame, which in turn is going to make my drawer slide installation very, very simple. When it comes to the spacers for the drawer slides to ensure that the slide itself actually sits flush to the face frame. That's not necessarily your only option. They actually do make what's called L brackets that will click onto the back of your drawer slide, and it comes up and makes an L shape, and that L shape has a bunch of holes that can be screwed into the back wall. The type of material that you're using for the back wall obviously will make a difference on whether or not you can use those. The simple solution, if you're going to use face frames and still installing drawers and you have that gap, fill that gap with something, attach the drawer slide to it, and you'll be good to go. Face frames do not have to be difficult when you're building cabinets. As you can see in the video, it's really, really simple to assemble, very, very easy to come up with your measurements, and extremely easy to install. My biggest recommendation when it comes to face frames is really just sitting down and planning out all your measurements and making sure everything is the way that you want it to be for the final cabinet. That's going to do it for me this week, everybody. I really hope you found some useful information. As always, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave them in the comments section down below. If you like the video, like it. If you feel like somebody else would benefit from the video, go ahead and share it. If you're not following me on Instagram, go over there and check me out at Bessey Woodworking. You'll get to see what I do on a daily basis, and I'm much more active on Instagram than I am on YouTube. I try to do tips and tricks on Instagram fairly regularly, so if you're liking what you're seeing here, definitely go over there and give me a follow. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video.